Hello and welcome back to Gary's Garage, but from the barn. So as you saw from the last episode, I was using the ramp to build a rotisserie for the Legnum, and I've now shifted that onto the trailer and got that out of the way because I'm going to be bringing the Shogun in to try to sort out the performance issues with it. So it's been running on LPG for a while, liquid petroleum gas, which is a bit like petrol, but it's a lot cheaper with less tax here in the UK. So when you've got a nice big thirsty car like the Shogun, LPG does help to reduce the running costs. However, something I think is not quite right with it, and it is running really terribly. It has almost no power. It's very gutless. It should be a 200 horsepower, 3.5 litre car, and it feels more like a 1.2 diesel, which isn't great. And towing, not brilliant at the moment, but I know that these should be good tow vehicles. So the plan for today is to get it in on the ramp and do a couple of things. I have a wideband oxygen sensor that I'm going to put in the exhaust. That will allow me to see exactly what the fueling is doing, both on petrol and on gas, so that I can tweak the gas as necessary. It has been misfiring on gas as well, so I have some new spark plugs to put in it, and I think that the vaporizer, more on that later, is too small for the capacity of the engine, so I have a new one of those. So without further ado, let's get the car in and get it up in the air and make a start. Stop. I strongly believe that air-fuel ratio is very important to working out the health of your engine, and the best way to do that is with a wideband oxygen controller and sensor in the exhaust. So I have one here. This is an old PLX one that I did have in a previous vehicle. It's been sat on a shelf for a couple of years, but should still be in very good condition. So that's the controller that sits inside the car. It takes power and the sensor plugs into it, and then it's got an output which is, in this case, a 0 to 5 volt signal for the wideband, and this also outputs a simulated narrowband output which goes direct into the stock ECU. And there is the sensor that needs to go in the exhaust, so it just has a short fly lead on it, then there's another piece of cable that goes from there into here. So the reason that I've got the Shogun up on the ramp is because I need to get to the exhaust to screw this into it. Thankfully, having just replaced the exhaust, I should have a nice free bung in the front of the catalytic converter that this should be able to screw straight into with very little hassle. And then I'm going to need to find a suitable hole through the body of the car to the inside so that I can pick up the power and all of the controller. So let's get under and try to figure out where I'm going to poke a hole through the car and get this installed in the exhaust. Alright, so up there on the cat is where the sensor's going to go, and I'm trying to find somewhere to bring the cable in. So over here we do have this cable there, sorry for flickering the light, that cable there, which is for the LED on the side step, and that goes up through the floor there and into the interior of the car. So I think I'm going to bring the car back down to the floor, open the door and lift the carpet and see if I can figure out where that comes in and possibly follow that route. Yep, there we go, that goes through there. That cable goes out through that grommet there and down and through, so that is the route I'm going to follow. So that's the sensor in the exhaust, and I've figured out where I'm going to put my little display unit, and that's going to be in the set of 3 dials that go across the middle of the dash. My dad had previously cut one of them out to put a bracket on for some kind of tablet or mobile phone or something. So the inclinometer that was there is no longer, so I'm going to make use of that gap that I've got in the dash. It should be nice in my eye view all the time to be able to see exactly what the fueling's doing. But while I go away and do that off camera, probably, because I'm going to need to do some 3D printing and designing, the next thing I need to do is to sort out the ignition. And I've got another set of plugs which came out of the Anglia, and I'm going to put those in, replacing the ones that are in here. It's been running so much better on petrol than it has on gas, so I think partly it's to do with that ignition. Gas is more difficult to ignite than petrol, so I'm going to change them out for some decent spark plugs. They've done very few miles before I took them out of the Anglia, so we'll stick them in here and see what that does. But it does mean moving half of the top of the engine and the inlet manifold, so let's get straight stuck in to that. Horrible place to get to. No. Oh, damn it. So that's all of the original spark plugs out, and they are already NGK Iridium BKR5EIX. They are listed as an upgrade to the stock plugs, which are something like BSR5E something. So they've already been upgraded to that, but they're not probably quite good enough for the LPG. That's my theory anyway. Looking at the plugs themselves, they all look pretty good. The ceramics there are sort of grey to brown, the tips look alright. Those 3 are out of the driver's side, and the ceramics on the top, the insulation, is fairly clean. But the ones on the other bank, which is the passenger side, again, the bits are actually in the engine, look okay, but looking at the tops of them, they are pretty discoloured. Obviously not focusing, but yeah, they're fairly discoloured compared to these ones just here. Hopefully that's coming across on the camera okay, that these ones are very brown and horrible and yucky and discoloured there. Also on the connectors there, it's a bit gunky as well, whereas those are nice and clean. Possibly because these ones are the more difficult ones to get to. Who knows? But I do have a full set of BKR7EIX, so these are 2 heat ranges colder, which may or may not do the trick. It might actually make it worse, but I've got them, so I'm going to give it a try. So I'm going to get these in, and while I'm there, I'm going to just give the leads a quick check over and just give them a quick clean up on the contacts, especially those ones that were on the passenger side bank. They were a bit grotty and grubby on the inside, so I'll give them a bit of a clean up with some electrical contact cleaner. So I'll get onto that and start to look at reinstalling the plugs. So that's the new plugs back in and the leads back in place, and you may have seen in the previous footage, but when I was trying to take the inlet manifold off, I dropped my deep 12mm socket and it has gone down in the middle of the engine, in the middle of the V, which is a right pain to get to, and I really do not want to leave my socket in there for the rest of time, so I'm going to need to try to extract it. And I also noticed when I was pulling it apart that the LPG is being injected into the upper part of the plenum, and that is quite a long way away from the petrol injectors and the valves, and that may also have an effect on how good the LPG system is running. So as I've got to take the lower manifold off anyway in order to retrieve my socket that I dropped, why not move the LPG injectors lower down, a lot closer to where the petrol injectors are, and zap up the holes in the manifold. I have the TIG welder, so I can do it at least, and all the inlet manifolds are pretty gunky anyway due to the exhaust gas recirculation and the breather off the crankcase. They're just covered in gunk, so I want to give them a good clean up anyway. And while I've got it all off, why not try to make the LPG system just that little bit better? That's kind of the whole point of doing this, make the car run better. So off with the lower manifold, which involves taking the fuel rail and injectors out. It's never easy, is it? Never easy. So after a litre or so of brake cleaner, they are looking very much nicer than they were. Obviously difficult for the camera to pick it up, but trust me, they are much cleaner inside. So the next thing I'm going to look at is, as I said, about trying to move these points for the LPG. So they are currently in this, which is the mid manifold section, and that has to go all the way through the lower manifold section before it gets anywhere to the bottom, and this is where the petrol injector injects. So petrol injector there, LPG injector is being injected right up here. That's quite a long distance, plus with the length of the hose as well. So what I'm hoping to do is to shift those nipples down to here so that it's injected a lot closer to where the petrol injector is injecting. So that'll be the next thing to look at. Pull one of these off, see about pulling it in here. I'm going to put the petrol injectors in just to make sure that I miss them and can get the pipes on still. And yeah, look at drilling and tapping into this, and then I'm going to have to block up the holes in the mid manifold. Okay, so a bit of not particularly pretty welding here on the manifold, but it looks like the holes are blocked up well enough. Time will tell, obviously, when I put it back together as to whether it is good enough. But before that goes on, I want to get to the vaporizer, which is down there, and I've got a new one second. Just here. And this one is pretty much identical to the one I've already got, but is rated definitely to 250 horsepower. So what we have is we have the gas come in, coolant loops in and out there to warm it up, the liquid fuel goes in there, gas comes out of there, and that's what goes off to the injectors that I've moved now slightly closer to the heads. And we also have a temperature sensor and a vacuum port, so I think that adjusts the amount of vacuum in this based on pressure on this, so that you've got a consistent pressure either side of the injectors, much like you have with the fuel system, petrol system with the fuel pressure regulator. That's sort of like a fuel pressure regulator kind of deal. So we need to rip the old one off and put this one on in its place. So that's a new vaporizer in. It was quite difficult to actually film it and get in to do it, but it's all in, it's on. The temperature sensor is all soldered on. They've moved that, I noticed, from the top round to the side. The old temperature sensor just fell out of the top as I started to take it apart, so obviously they've found that that was a problem and have resolved it by moving it round. So that's all in. So that should be the LPG system back pretty much as it was, well, with the upgrades anyway. And now I can look at putting the manifolds back on and hopefully getting the car, well, top up the coolant and then hopefully get the car running. So back on with the manifolds and the throttle body. Okay, so that took so long to put back together that the camera actually filled up the memory card. So apologies for skipping over the final bit of putting it back together, but it was the reverse of pulling it apart. So if you want to see it go back together, kind of scroll back in the video and play it in reverse, I guess. I've got to put a bit of water in it because obviously a load of coolant went everywhere, and then fire it up and hopefully bring it up to temperature slowly, bleed the cooling system. I'll just run it on petrol for the moment, and then once it's up to temperature on petrol, we'll look at flicking it over to gas and see what happens. So, top up the coolant and away we go, hopefully. So it looks like a flat battery, possibly from having doors open or something. So I've got another couple of batteries around, so let's hook up some jump leads and see if that will make it start. Yeah, I don't quite know what that is. Maybe it is just not enough juice. I don't know. I've spent about 4 evenings and a day on this now. I am fed up with it. I think I'm going to have a break and come back to it later. We shall see. But yeah, just need a break from it before I get frustrated. So I had plug leads one way round, but I had coolant coming from somewhere. Need to find where. Seems to have stopped, maybe. Maybe it was just what was in and around.
Availability and geographical exclusions apply.
I think that's running all right. So I'm going to see what happens when I flick it over to gas. Don't know how well this will run. Okay, so we're now on gas. So it's running at least. So we're at least running on gas. I will obviously need to hook the computer up and make sure that the tune is right, maybe reset the tune and redo the tune from start, but at least it's running on gas and petrol. So yeah, I just took a moment away from it, I stepped away from it, and I suddenly realised that where I'd rearranged the plug leads in order to fit the gas valves in, the gas injectors, I didn't check where these went, and I obviously had most of them completely wrong. So I did a quick Google search, found somebody who had done a nice diagram of the cylinders and where they all go, all colour coded as well, which was really nice, and rearranged them, and as you saw, it fired up. The only two that I weren't 100% sure about were these ones because I couldn't quite see underneath. So it was running on 4, pulled them off, switched them over, and instantly started running on 6. So, yep, we are there. It's up and running again. What a fun time that was. So yeah, what I need to do now is look at getting the laptop hooked up to it, go out for a drive with that hooked up, see what's what. But I will not be doing that right now because I need to go and have a relax because, as I said, I've been on this for quite a long time. So I shall be back next time with a progress update on this. Thank you very much for watching, and if you enjoy what I'm doing, then don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, share, etc. And if you really love what I'm doing and you want to help me out, then you can join me on Patreon. All the links are down in the description. It is much appreciated, and a huge thank you to everybody who has done so far. But that is me for today on the Shogun, and hopefully next time I'll be back on the Anglia, but I'll give you a quick progress update on how this is going. So thank you very much for watching, and see you next time on Garry's Garage. Bye.